Hey everybody, welcome back to That Girl Connor. And guess what? I have bangs, and guess what? I hate them. I was thinking I was liking them, and then I had to trim them a little bit yesterday, and I did it myself because why wouldn't I? I noticed right before I had to go to work, and I was like, I could probably cut my own bangs. I used to do it a bunch, and they look stupid. And here's the thing about bangs is, oh my god, and I know this about bangs, which is why I didn't want to get bangs again, is that bangs look good like 14% of the time, and the rest of the time it's making your bangs look good, at least on my hair, and it's an experience of every woman who's ever had bangs. So this is a really quick December TBR list with you guys, plus a book review of books that I've already read this December, which haven't been very many. I have this, and then one end of the year video coming out, and that's kind of it for my content for the rest of the year. Not that I've been particularly consistent with it or anything like that, but I have loved getting to make videos again. So, if there's any books you desperately want me to review or read or anything like that, I'd be so happy to do that. But this is going to be the start of a quick, I'm hoping a quick December TBR list, but probably not, because I'm a menace on the Libby app because I have my Maryland library card. I also signed up for a Sunnyvale library card, which is like a free card you can get even if you don't live in California. If you don't know how to do it, I would just Google Sunnyvale Public Library card, and you can use it on Libby. I guess you can't really use it for physical books if you don't live there, but if you use the Libby app, which I highly recommend, you can use it. And one of the very first things I did when I got to Omaha is get my Omaha library card. So I have some books on Libby to take out, and I already did one audiobook called How Can I Help You?, which overall I gave a 3 to. It was fine. I read or listen to a fair amount of kind of thriller-esque books, and some are more successful than others. And I think this is something that happens when you read a lot of books, is that I probably would have really enjoyed the story if it was my first dual perspective thriller. Somebody is creating a new life, but I didn't take it far enough, and there was definitely setup for our main character to, or I guess it's dual perspective. This woman named Margot who has a secret, and this woman Patricia who comes into the library. And it's kind of a quick audiobook, about 8 hours, which is pretty quick for most audiobooks, I feel like, which is a good amount for me personally. I really, once an audiobook is longer than probably I would say 12 hours, 10 hours, it really starts to slog for me. But the book just could have given more. It was well written, it was intriguing, I was invested, and I just felt like the ending wasn't that amazing. It was kind of whatever, and it, for me, falls into the camp of thrillers I think that will be forgettable in a year, which I don't have a ton that fit in. I don't have a set list of those that I could rattle off, but when I think about other thrillers, well, I could name you a few, honestly, because I really like to listen to them because they're pretty easy to listen to, but they're so whatever. When I think of ones that stick out to me is okay, The Writing Retreat, I think, is something that I will remember in more than 6 months because it gets so wackadoo, silly, ridiculous that it's doing something. And I just sometimes feel like so many books are doing nothing. It is a story, and I appreciate that it's a story, but if I can't remember anything about it in 3 months or 2 months after reading it, how interesting of a story was that actually? I think the answer would be not very. But and sometimes I like that. I don't mind that basically most cozy mysteries I read are copy and print of the other ones, plot wise, but certain ones stick out to me more because they have better written characters or they're switching something up in the narrative that makes it stick out to me. And How Can I Help You, I think, has this interesting premise that's really rooted in true crime, where Margot, our main character, this is maybe spoilers, you find it out within the first chapter or second chapter, is what would be considered an angel of death killer, going from hospital to hospital where she was killing patients. Although in this scenario, she was killing elderly patients and not like babies, or like young patients, which is a little bit more on theme for angel of death killers. But that being said, the story, I think, really relied on that being the most intriguing part. And Margot's perspectives were definitely the most intriguing part. And you realize, which is something that we have talked about, that if you're into true crime is kind of different, but like she is compulsively has to be a killer, she realizes, and has a hard time not being able to do that. And something happens that triggers this momentum. But the book, I thought, was gonna go there in like 2 or 3 different ways. Fundamentally, I thought more things would happen. And it just kind of ends with this, like, then there was, we burned it all to the ground. And it's like, okay, well, like, that to me is not that interesting. And like I said, I've read a fair amount of thrillers and stuff. And it's like, how interesting and intriguing are they really? So I wanted just to go over some books I wanted to read. On my Libby app with the Omaha Public Library, I have Everybody in My Family Has Killed Someone, which I'm pretty excited to read. That one normally has a pretty long wait time, and I'm just excited to read it. It sounds really interesting. And then I have The Birch Box by Louise Eldridge. This is an audiobook, and I really like Louise Eldridge, and I want to be mindful about making sure I'm reading more diverse authors, and Louise Eldridge is an Indigenous author that I know I enjoy. And then I have Half a Soul, which is a book that a bunch of people have recommended, and specifically Books and Lala, who's like the main booktuber I would say that I watch a lot of. She is the person that I take recommendations for because it seems like I have pretty similar interests and likes to her books. But I do watch a fair amount of other booktubers, obviously. So yeah, that was kind of really it for this video for right now. I will update you probably once I finish or start one of these books in a meaningful way to update you. But I'm hoping we can do this quickly, and then I can, get this done. Excited about that one. But I just finished last night Everybody in My Family Has Killed Someone. It has been so long since I've stayed up so late reading a book. Like, the first probably like third was good. I was invested, but I wasn't like, oh my god, I can't put this down. But that was last night. Aaron and I both had a little bit of trouble falling asleep, and normally I can read on my phone, and I'm sure somebody's gonna be like, you can't do that. Whatever, girl. I am almost 30, okay? Calm down. I know if I should or shouldn't be doing it, but I couldn't stop reading because I was getting more invested, finding out more information. Books and Lala gave that like a 5 out of 5 stars, and I would say for me also it's probably 5 out of 5. I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning reading it. I'm so excited to read the next book, and I'll explain a little bit of the plot. The book is direct to narrator or direct to reader, which I can enjoy. Sometimes I find them to be a little too like, aren't I so clever? And it's like, you gotta find the balance of doing that. It's like, you gotta find the right balance, and I think this author found a good balance in doing that. Sets and establishes that everybody in this family has killed somebody and how that has happened, and and so the book is set up like my mom, my dad, my sister, my stepsister, whatever. And then, but it's not just my mom killed somebody this way, my dad killed somebody this way. So it's like, the plot is that our main character, Ern, got invited to a family reunion, and he has to go even though he's avoided them. And we're finding out why he's been avoiding them, but also why he had to go to this one, and all who's considered in his family, and they're going to this pretty secluded area, and in the mountains, and it takes place in Sydney, which is pretty cool. And it starts telling this narrative of like, as we're meeting these characters, we're finding out their backstory and how or if or why they killed somebody, and why there's tensions in the family. And that's kind of the first person we find out about, is how his brother killed somebody. And then something happens. They find a dead body, and it's a Snowden situation, of course, but he calls that out, of course. And we're solving the mystery of why this body is here, and then more bodies are showing up and more things are happening, and it's like, oh shit, like stuff is going on. And so it's like a layered thing, and we're also getting snippets from the past. We're solving this current mystery and then this other mystery that is being told as we're learning about each of the characters. So I hope I explained that well. Sometimes I feel like when I'm trying to explain a plot, I'm trying so hard not to do spoilers and also not give too much away, and also just lightly encourage people to read it. If that sounds interesting to you, a mystery with layers, then I would really recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, stayed up till 2 a.m., which I think the last book I remember staying up that late to finish was the Cozy Mystery series that I really loved. I remember really loving The Appeal as well, and staying up for that. Like, I remember thinking, oh my god, I might call out of work today because I want to finish it. But no, I didn't do that. My previous boss. So I am really excited. I feel like I'm getting through my December TBR, and I'm excited to have some reading time tonight and also some audiobook time. Half a Soul is due soonest, and then it's The Bear and the Nightingale and 7 Days of Us, which is a romance. I don't know how I'll feel necessarily about reading another romance, because I know Half a Soul is romance. Oh, those are my chickpeas. I hope they're... Hey everybody, it's the next day. I thought I would update you on Half a Soul, which I also don't think I ever say the authors of these books because I'm so bad at memorizing stuff, like, not memorizing, but I should just reference it. It's like I have to go to work and like I have to leave for work in like 7 minutes, but well, as you guys know, I moved to Omaha and my commute is like so much less. It's sometimes a little hard because I'm like, I live 7 minutes from work and it's usually like 10-ish minutes, but it's very cold, so I have to heat up my car. And, you know, I just like to give myself a little bit of time, so I leave like 15 minutes early. But truly, it's like, this would not even be possible back home. Like, I would have had to wake up like 2 hours before this. I wouldn't have had such a chill, relaxing morning. And I wouldn't have gotten to lay in bed and to read till I was about halfway. So I'm 163 pages of 330, and I'm loving Half a Soul. It's, I think, a pretty easy book to get into. The story starts off with action, but it's not confusing action. Sometimes I feel like books will start off with action, but you're like, excuse me, I don't have any context for this action, but it's meaningful. It sets off the story, and we then meet our main characters and we get involved in her life. I have to do some research, but I remember that Books and Lala said that this book, maybe the author thought that this was a good representation of either like her autism, but I can definitely see how that could be possible. Throughout the book, our main character is for some reason less susceptible to feelings and less understanding of like social norms. This is of course set in kind of like pseudo Regency era, which was a point of time where there was a lot of rules and a lot of stuff said or unsaid that you were just supposed to know. And one, if you're just somebody who was like, I have a hard time picking up on these cues, I imagine that would be so hard and so confusing when there's so much like double entendre and what you kind of can't say. It kind of reminds me of like A Most Agreeable Murder in that way, where it's like there are so many, and I mean it's of the time, and obviously to highlight that, they're playing that up even more. But yeah, I think that like that is a very frustrating part to be in the world or a point in time, because like it sounds like it is impossible to get anything done because everybody's spending so much time not saying the things that they need to be saying to getting the things that they need done to get done. But in this world, magic is real, and again, because like fairies are real and we know that, and we have now gotten to London and we've met the Lord Sorcerer, and Vanessa, Dora's cousin, is like really adamant about meeting the Lord Sorcerer, and then she realizes the reason that is not because she's in love with him and wants to marry him, it's because he wants her to cure Dora, which I think Dora has always looked to her cousin Vanessa as somebody who could help her, as somebody who loved her unconditionally, where she could be her whole self around her. And it is, I don't think this spoils anything. I think that Dora is starting to have very real feelings that are affecting her like a lot longer and for more periods of time. And one of these is the hurt that she feels for that, which she is grappling with because she knows that her cousin means it out of love, but it still hurts her because in a lot of ways her cousin was like her only safe person. And turns out her only safe person was humoring her until we got to this point in life. So like I said, I'm like literally almost perfectly halfway. It's quick moving. I would say like if you've been wanting to try like light fantasy, light cozy fantasy, I don't think that you could technically classify this as romantasy, because I think that those always have to do with like intense ass bullshit, and I don't think that this does. But theoretically it definitely has romance in it, and it's definitely a fantasy novel. I don't think it gets the full romantasy tag. Cozy fantasy, like it's all of those things. And if you've maybe been in a reading slump, it's not particularly long. It's like 300-ish pages, and I don't know how much of that is like what's in the back and stuff like that. But also, I think it reads quickly and it's easy to get invested in. And so because of that, it's a quick read. Like I said, I was reading it, well, I didn't say this. Yesterday when I was reading it, I was like a page or two into it, and then all of a sudden it was like I started really reading it around like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then all of a sudden it was like 10:50 and I was 115 pages in, and I was like, oh my god, what the fuck? Like, where did the time go? Where did those pages go? Because I've been like absorbing it and I like it, but oh my god, like that's so much of the book. So like I said, I had less than 7. A quick update. Okay. Yeah. A quick update. I finished Half a Soul. I think that I've only ever seen hype for this book online, and I think it's well deserved. It is romance, it's fairy, it's like rom-com-y, it's closed door, so there's not a lot of spice. I honestly don't even know if there's kissing. The fairy is like the right fairy, and I think I talked about this in my Encyclopedia of Fairies book. It's the when and if you interact with fairies in the story, they're terrifying the way they are in folklore, which I definitely prefer over like fairy prince smut stuff. And I know that a lot of people were like, they're terrifying in that book too. Yeah, but they're not scary enough in like a meaningful way that I don't know. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. Olivia Atwater has a whole series of these, but they follow different people, which is kind of common in like romance books. I would say that I wish I had like maybe 13 to 20 more pages of the two characters when they got together. Maybe the epilogue was like slightly longer, but I did really enjoy it. I would definitely recommend it if you are into like light or cozy fantasy, into romance, but the whole point of the story is like the romance that happens. I don't even know if I gave a summary of this book, but our main character is struggling with something that makes her different than other people, and not like in a I'm not like other girls way. Different in that she feels really lost in society because there's so many rules and there's so many ways you're supposed to behave, and she does not, and she doesn't understand it. And a lot of the time it doesn't super bother her, but people are mean-spirited to her, and she has like one friend, and it's her cousin, who she describes, I loved this phrase, like a warm lantern light, and I thought that was such a sweet way to refer to the people that bring us the most comfort and we feel like we can be our most authentic selves around. There are some moments that are very upsetting and sad, but I think it adds to the depth of the story. And unlike in my review of A Witch's Guide to Dating a Demon, I understand why both these characters end up liking each other, and I think they do a good job in establishing that, and also establishing them finding each other and just complimenting each other while not being people that I don't know. I just think it's really good. I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to say and talk too much. It's supposed to be like kind of a quick December TBR blog. I have a couple more books to read. I'm still reading The Bear and the Nightingale. That book is like a little bit denser because it's a little bit more high fantasy, and I actually left work today earlier because I I had such a stomach ache and a little bit of a headache, and it was like a headache where it was making me nauseous, and then every smell I was smelling was making me more nauseous, and then I came home and I immediately feel like a fair amount better. I still have a bit of a headache, but it's just really cold here. And I think I went to bed with hair that was like not super wet, but like a little bit more damp. And I don't want the hair girlies to come for me, because there are so many people online that are like, things I would never ever do. And I'm like, but sometimes you shower too late and you don't want to blow dry your hair because it's so loud and your hair's mostly dry and it should be fine. Like, there are too many rules sometimes. I feel like I'm like, I cannot be living my life following every single rule about like my personal. So I sometimes I'm going to bed with a little bit of wet hair. Although I did wake up with a headache, so joke's on me. I have some bad news, friends. I am in my sleepy girl era. I have never been a great sleeper, and I have gotten better at sleeping as I've gotten older, but moving to Omaha, I do not know what is up. I have such a hard time getting up all the time. I never used to be able to sleep in like as much as I have been recently. Like, today is my day off. Now, we went to bed a little bit later yesterday. We went to bed at midnight, but that's not crazy late, like, for us, especially, like, recently. And we both got to, like, I didn't have work today, and Aaron went in a little late. But, like, the way I could not get my body out of bed before 10. And at my old apartment, our old apartment had, like, a lot of natural light. So it was really hard, I will say, to sleep in, especially, like, because it would get so hot and the sun is shining, like, just in the bedroom. But, like, I cannot get myself to get out of bed. And I've gone to bed, like, early some nights. Like, I've gone to bed at different times. I just feel like I don't know if my body is like, girl, we've been tired since you were 14, and this is the time to wake up from it. And my eye is swollen again. I think you can read it on camera pretty well. I think I mentioned when I first moved out here, my eye swelled up like the second day we were here, and I had to go and get medicine for it, and it was so annoying, and I don't know what's wrong with it. It doesn't hurt like it did before, so I think it might just be like an eczema situation, but I'm going through it today. And the one thing I was so excited about was to tell you guys that I'm halfway through A Haunting on the Hill. And I am not. I'm not even 100 pages into this 300-page book, but I feel like I'm halfway through it because it's so boring. So I'll tell you about the story. Is about this couple that's one of them is a playwright and the other one is a songstress. And our main character, Holly, she is a, like, something happened to her in her past that has affected her career as a playwright, even though whatever it was, we already know is not her fault. I don't know what it is, but we know. And she has been floundering kind of at this private school, being like a theater, like English teacher, and she has been teaching for 20 years, but still feels like she's just kind of wandering around in the world and like doesn't really connect too well with like the kids and stuff, which I thought was such an interesting thing to leave in there. And she is dating this person named Nisa, this woman named Nisa, who is kind of like a songstress. They seem to have what I would imagine is a slightly larger age gap than I would expect. Holly's like in her 40s and Nisa is not. She has like kind of a following. Of course, they live in New York. This is supposed to take place like shortly after the pandemic, and I can tell because there's so many references to the pandemic, and there's a lot of references to people from New York going and essentially gentrifying upstate towns because it's so much cheaper, and they essentially, you know, do what gentrifying does, which is they all left New York so they could live up here, and they've made it just as or expensive and all that stuff for that. We follow Holly when she wakes up earlier before Nisa and leaves and just goes driving when they're like upstate on a vacation, and she stumbles upon this like very eerie house that has like she's drawn to it, but it's very easy. And she recently got grant money to work on this play that she is like kind of adapting this old forgotten play about witches to something different. And she got some grant money for it. And she wants to rent the house for like 2 or 3 weeks to work with everybody, to workshop the play, to do all of this stuff. And I just got to the part where they're driving up, which is why I think I thought it was like kind of halfway through the story. there's a lot of building up. There's like the person who's renting the house is so weird about renting it out. There's a lot of weird things that are happening with like time not going well. There's this hair that keeps being there. And I'm intrigued on this level of like, where is this going to go? I am not intrigued about our characters. I find them to be painfully similar, and I feel similar to a lot of things. And I know that there are certain rules of certain genres and certain tropes, but my God, these characters seem so uninspired. And I feel like, and this is going to sound mean, I feel like sometimes people go, oh, well, we can just make a character not a white straight person, and then it puts the horror story in like a whole new light. And I'm like, that in fact does not change anything. If you still have a tired, boring character and you have just made 2 tired, boring characters but now they're queer, you have in fact not done anything interesting or special. We also get at least 100 pages into the book, or maybe like 80 pages into the book, all of a sudden a perspective shift, which I like a dual perspective story, but I feel like you have to establish that early on. And also, it's not like a perspective shift per chapter, starting like you read the first part all in Holly's perspective, and at page 60 it switches and then says Nisa, so you know that a good portion of it, it's in the middle of a chapter, it just switches to Nisa's perspective and then it switches back to Holly's. And I was like, girl, no fucking way. What are we doing? So I am intrigued by the story because they have laid some groundwork for this haunted house. I do feel like, as somebody who has like loved true crime most of my life, because it's not just true crime now, it's always been true crime. Marcus Parks knows what's up, and I think that there is, of course, ethical and unethical ways to view and participate in true crime and all that. But I get so annoyed when I read stories about people who think they're being so interesting because they like just like the bare minimum of it. And one thing that immediately irritated me in this story is that while they're driving up, they also have a friend named Stevie who's driving up with them, who we find out might be doing some things with one of these people that's shady. He makes a reference to the preschool satanic, like, the Franklin preschool, like, case from the 80s. And if you are gonna be a fuck around, I'm better than everybody artist who's into true crime, don't fucking act like you don't know about the satanic panic and that was coerced. Because that is the shit that makes me so mad. I'm mad that these people, back to the story, sorry, these people get so, they are so happy and rewarding themselves, and we're supposed to be, as the reader, rewarding them for being so interesting and so into true crime, and they reference something that is so obviously, if you're into true crime and like into that kind of era and like what that really did to define a generation, the satanic panic, you know that that's not real. Well, like, it happened, but it was unfounded, and I just want 40-year-olds to be a little bit smarter. And so you might be thinking, Hunter, are you going to DNF the book? And the answer is no. I'm going to read it because here's what I'll say. I don't know if I'm going to film like a better clip about it because I don't really have that much to say that I didn't already say about The Haunting of Hill House. I did not like it. I probably would give it like a 2-star because there are parts of it that are good. I mean, it's the words on the page are good and it's well written. I think it's hard. This is the other thing. I do not have any, like, I loved this Shirley Jackson book, so it has to be living up to that for me. It does not, because I don't have any reference for that. But to me, the book was neither scary nor eerie. And I'm a fucking baby. Like, everything terrifies me. And so much of the book was not scary. So much of the fear was not built up. Especially the ending is so random. I mean, spoilers, I kind of thought the book would take this very, like, infighting, inbreeding, almost like Blair Witch Project style, like, the entity of the house is turning everybody against each other and making them very self-focused, because I thought that was kind of built up well, and all these characters are so irritating anyway that, like, that's a good way to be like, they're so irritating because of the house is making them this way. which I think is like a pretty solid and, you know, not new, but, you know, readable. The ending is so random. And here's the other thing. I didn't get it. I didn't fucking get it. I just didn't get it. And I looked online for like explanations, for representations, and all anybody says is like, it represents trauma. And I'm like, yeah, fucking every horror thing is like queer awakening, trauma, the like, you know, Dracula, like vampirism is all about like xenophobia. Like, I fucking know that. I'm not a baby. What does this specific thing represent? And why was it there? And so much as there's online is like, just, I guess it's a pretty new book, so maybe there's not as many reviews, but there's so much online about like the show and the original book, and then just like kind of generic reviews of this book in comparison to the previous book, but not a lot of like deep literary analysis, which makes sense, but I was like, I don't understand. So can somebody explain it to me? Pretty please. So anyways, I didn't like it and I didn't get it. So kind of sad, because the first two books are so good. I have two holds come through that I think I have to read before this. And one of them I finished was that time that I got drunk and saved a demon. Picture right here, because I'm always getting stuff out on Libby. But the thing that's so crazy to me is I had never heard of this book. And I just watched Books and Lala's video, because she's the only booktuber I watch. And she had that book as a book she bought. Kayla, if you watch, I don't think you're going to like that book. Just throwing it out there. It's pretty spicy. She also had The Bear and the Nightingale as a book that she bought. And again, another book I hadn't heard of. And then I was watching Jessie Owens this morning. And she said she DNF'd that time I got drunk and saved a demon. And I agree with why she DNF'd it. She said she was listening to it and listening to it was bad. And I imagined that would be true. Because to be honest with you, I did stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning reading it. But I almost DNF'd it a couple times. Because I was pretty excited to read another like magical D&D is real kind of world. And obviously the point of the book is not to have like the best world building. However, I found that people were so willing to accept that everything they knew to be true was false too easily in the beginning of the book. This is like a fantasy romance, so we have a demon and a regular ass human, and of course there's a little bit of like, you're so old and you're so evil, and there's a lot of like that weird possessive stuff. I will say it wasn't super crazy off-putting to me. It wasn't like an ongoing fight the way it is like really in like Sookie Stackhouse and like Twilight. Like it wasn't that bad, but it was definitely there. But I think they were trying to make things a little bit more fun and a little bit more lighthearted. Although I also feel like our main character caves really easily. So I'm unsure. And also I feel like they added, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, because it's like, there's not a ton to the story. Personally, I would feel like, it's to set up a narrative so that there can be sex. And I will be honest with you, the first sex scene I thought was pretty good. The other ones are also pretty solid, but I don't know if they would pass my test of if something is a good sex scene, because I think that it's harder to get away with a poorly written sex scene if you're listening to an audiobook, because you have to listen to it, and in an actual book you could skip around, your mind can glaze over some stuff, you can fill stuff in, but I feel like when you're listening to it, like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes it can feel really clunky, or it can feel like, and even if it's like, I'm personally not into this and having to listen to this is terrible for me, I don't know. I think that the sex gets like a little bit rampant. It's 200-ish pages, and there is 4 to 5 sex scenes, which to me is like a lot. Well, they're also trying to save the world. I just feel like 5 is a lot, and I also feel like they're pretty similar. And while I said the first time I read it, I was like, oh, it's pretty hot. It gets quite similar, and there's a lot of stuff that like I'm like, you get a little bit fatigued on it. Now maybe that was just because I read it all basically in like one night, or it's because it's a short book and there were so many sex scenes, but I just wasn't super into it. I did enjoy that there was like the like enthusiastic consent stuff, like that was all there, that was present. But it's quite spicy, and like I said, I think that they thought, oh, a fantasy world where this would be easy to write, and we can create the, like, it will just have the backdrop and then it will be romance. And I like that things are set in fantasy worlds, but I think they tried to make it too involved of a fantasy world that they were prepared to write. So our main character, Cinnamon, is not like other girls because she never wanted to be into adventure. That is something she actively tells us directly to the reader, and then we later find out that that's not true. She used to be into adventuring until her sister died, which to me is very frustrating because I feel as though if you're going to be so direct to reader, why are you lying to us? Even have her be mysterious, and maybe I misunderstood it, but the thing that really got me is that everybody seems very reverent to this goddess, and we have no reason for Cinnamon to not be. But then the demon comes, and we find out that this goddess is not a goddess. She's actually a lich, a sorceress lich and necromancer, and she's been harming people and harming like sentient creatures, the demons, for years, and everybody's believed this because the magic she has makes the demons go kind of crazy. So whenever people interact with them, they do see that she is, that like the demons are being very ferocious and vicious, and they basically have like a Hadrian's Wall, Hunger Games style thing where like every 15 years 4 heroes have to go out of the wall and do something for the goddess. But they find out, like her family finds out that the goddess is fake, and they are so willing to accept it so quickly. And they have this kind of interesting part where you find out that Cinnamon's mom is like a storyteller, kind of oral history keeper for these tribes that exist outside of the walls, but that's never really established as like, my mom's always had her doubts, especially since we lost her sister. It's just like that's thrown in there, and then they all just are like, yeah, the goddess isn't really a goddess, she's a lich. And it just feels so wild to me that this has been the belief system for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they don't question that thought immediately, or we haven't had an establishment that the main character has reservations about the goddess, like truly enough. Like she is sometimes not super reverent to the goddess, but certainly not calling her a goddess, not questioning her, like none of those things. She also has a friend that I just am realizing we never get another update on, so I guess fuck her friends. So I'm trying to think if I would read the other books in the series. The second one is called The Time I Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf, which I think in general that is probably my least favorite title I've ever heard for things. Because it's like, it's trying too hard to be quirky and interesting, and I just don't have the patience. If you have to try that hard, you're not quirky and interesting. You know what I mean? Okay. Hey everybody, it's me with my final update from my December reading vlog, which is great because it's January 4th. I hope you guys all had a great, safe holiday. I hope everybody, you know, got what they wanted, is treating themselves, and is going into the new year with no crazy expectations on themselves. You know, it's 2023 anymore. We're not making crazy, like, I'm going to change everything about myself resolutions. This is the last time you'll probably see me in this setting by my Christmas tree. I just thought it would be really fun. And I did have 2 book updates because technically I finished these books in January, but I think that they should count because one of them I finished on January 1st and one of them I finished yesterday, which is January 3rd, and they've been books that I talked briefly about in this vlog. So the first book, my first book of 2024, and my last book in this vlog is The Henna Artist. I listened to this via audiobook, and I will say I've been listening to it for quite a long time. When we first got here, when I wasn't working, I was listening to it, and I was enjoying it. It's kind of one of those long, epic stories where there's like a lot not happening, but also a lot happening. Like there's a lot of dynamics and people, and it follows the story of a woman, Lakshmi, who left a life and is now building a life. And then her sister comes bringing her past back to her. And it really evaluates a few different things. I think the thing that was most interesting to me about it was the discussions, like in the author's an Indian woman, in the voices of somebody about Indian independence, and it takes place from like the 1940s through like the early 50s, I believe. Like I said, I listened to probably the first 30 of it like a little bit ago, and then I was rearranging a section in the wine department. If my boss is watching this, no, I wasn't listening to this at work, and it's like a lot of work to do that, and I need something to listen to. I just had a day where I was like doing a task that is both mindless but also requires some thinking, so listening to an audiobook or a podcast or something like that's really great for me. And so I listened to it, and I listened to the rest of it that day, and I really enjoyed it. I really took the time to kind of process it. It's a Reese's book club pick, and it's definitely a book that I think that like people's moms would like. Which, hey, I like books that moms would like too, you know? We can all be that kind of person. Go us. But yeah, so I would recommend that. Probably like 4 out of 5 stars. I will say it's pretty slow, and I can't imagine reading it. I feel like listening to it was better for me. The last book I read, which I finished yesterday, was Anna Maria and the Facts, which again is another book that I've talked about in this video, which is why I wanted to talk about it. I give that book finally a 2. I did not like it, I think. I don't want to be too harsh on it. I was enjoying it. It's like a contemporary romance, but a historical romance, if that makes sense. So it's like, we're in like contemporary romances, and it's like all that dual perspective, like, I don't even know if it's like, I feel like people are so loosey-goosey with the term enemies to lovers. Like, I've heard people describe Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies as like enemies to lovers, and I don't even, like, I'm like, in my mind, Emily and Wendell didn't dislike each other, like, even ever in the book. She's like annoying, but she's annoyed with everybody. Like, she's curmudgeon. If anything, I would say it's like a grumpy sunshine kind of vibe. But anyways, we follow this family of important to the Mexican government. Their father's like an important part of the rebel Mexican government, and they get sent to London to live with their uncle, and it's a really great story. Like, I really was enjoying the first part of it, where the sisters are getting along and they're realizing that they've been pitted against each other their whole life. And then Anna Maria meets Mr. Fox. Now, things happen, and this is spoilers, they end up together. But they end up together in a concerning amount of time is left in the book, like 70 pages. And you're like, why is there so much work? That's because this book, which had 0 spice, and I'm not an anti-spice girly. I'm not. I'm also not like a pro-intense spice girly. But this book had no spice in it. And then all the fucking sudden, their wedding night, it's like aggressive, intense sex, and we're reading this dual perspective storyline where our female character is like is being both the Madonna and the whore at the same time, and they're both so into it, and I hate it. I hate that it's like she's a fresh virgin, she doesn't know anything, but she knows how to touch herself just how she wants. And there are certain words that I don't like for certain things in books, and they use a lot of those. And not only is it like one laborious sex scene that I feel makes me very uncomfortable, because I just felt like it wasn't fitting with the tone of the rest of the book. There's this whole complex of being both a virgin and a whore at the same time. Like, if you know the Madonna whore complex, you know the Madonna whore complex. If you're a woman in society, welcome to it. But to have both be so in the forefront of your partner's mind was so wild to me. I did not enjoy it. I did not like it. I do not recommend it. And yeah, that happened. And then it's like pages of them continuously having sex, including when they take a bath where he gets her a bath. And I don't know. I know I said I loved in The Discovery of Witches where there was a lot of sensual bathing, but this did not. It was like the aggressive change in the characters. I did not like it. So yeah, that's a 2. So it's kind of sad. It kind of sucks that in this vlog I've read like 5 books, 2 of which were 5s, 1 of which put me into a reading slump, and then God, what was the other one I finished that, I read another one. So yeah, I hope everybody has a great 2024, had a great 2023, and just remember that the only thing we can do is be the best version of ourselves going forward. I'm hoping to make fun new videos this upcoming year. And yeah, this is my probably first and last attempt at vlog style videos. It's hard and I hate filming in public, but yeah, I hope I edit this video and put it up pretty soon so it's still somewhat relevant. Yeah.